Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars. Hello there. This is Dave, and you're listening to What Does Star Wars Mean to You, the show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars, from industry insiders to indie artists, from mega collectors to obsessive mythologists, to find out how Star Wars impacted their life. Here's the thing, there's a lot of ways to look at Star Wars, and it's all from a certain point of view, and that point of view is yours. And let's face it, we all love what we all love about Star Wars. And I believe that hearing someone talk passionately about what they love can open your own mind to new ways of thinking about things. Also, it's just fun to talk Star Wars. So I want to change the conversation from what is right or wrong with Star Wars to what does Star Wars mean to you? Today it's episode 15, my conversation with co-authors Jamie Benning and Justin Berger. They have put together a reference timeline book, Return of the Jedi, the Unauthorized Timeline, 1976 to 2023. So hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. If you're liking the show, please give us a 5-star rating and review. And jump in on the conversation on Twitter and Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. Now, let's find out, what does Star Wars mean to Jamie and Justin? Today we're doing something a little different, as I don't welcome just one Star Wars fan, but 2, to find out what does Star Wars mean to them. They are the co-authors of the just-released book, Return of the Jedi, Unauthorized Timeline, 1976 to 2023. Now first up is Justin Berger. After spending the better part of 15 years as an indie record label manager and indie filmmaker, Justin now works as an author, editor, and proofreader through his company, Anchorhead Publishing. He has also worked on Kim D. Simmons' Kenner Star Wars photography series, as well as Richard Wolosky's Today in Star Wars History, Part 1 and 2. Justin, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm going to introduce your co-author, Jamie Benning. He's a podcaster who hosts the film history show, the Filmumentaries Podcast, as well as the Filmumentary Features, where he has dedicated years putting together documentary-style commentary over the movies. He has done this for Star Wars, the original trilogy, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Jaws. He is also a live events television coordinator, editor, and director. And in between all that, Jamie is currently working on his first feature-length doc, Not Your Average Joe, about the life and career of Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind production designer, Joe Alves. Let's give a warm hello there to Justin and Jamie.
Hello there. Thanks for having us. It's good to be here and good to talk about our book, hopefully.
Yes. Thank you very much. First thing I'd like to start with is 5 with the Force. This is 5 questions I ask all my guests that kind of gives a baseline of their Star Wars fandom. So I'll ask the first question, and each of you can answer in turn. Shall we flip a coin to see who answers first, or have you guys worked out like who goes first?
Well, we're both first? JB. Who's alphabetically?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it would be me, but
It would be you.
That was the other thing I noticed. You're both JBs. My first question: which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
My go-to favorite has changed over the years. This is not going to be a simple answer. I guess, for many years it was Return of the Jedi when I was young. As I got older, it was The Empire Strikes Back. But I still just love that kind of, free and easy feel of Star Wars as well. Just it's a good pick-me-up. So difficult to pick one, but I guess if I did have to pick one, right now I'd say Return of the Jedi.
It's fitting, too, for the book. I mean, you've just done probably years of research to put this together.
Yeah, quite Justin. A bit of research. Yeah. Justin, what about you?
A lifetime of research, if you think about it.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I'm going to buck the system. Empire Strikes Back is my favorite, which is why I did the original timeline book for Empire, because that's my favorite movie of all time. And, if I had a favorite Star Wars, it's always going to be Empire. I just love that movie. It's just perfect in every way.
It's mine too, Justin. Not really, but I said Return of the Jedi.
Nope, you said Return of the Jedi.
We're plugging this book.
You're out of the club. You are out of the club, Jamie.
Yes. This I have to roll 1d6 for. Let's see, 6. What is your favorite spaceship or vehicle?
Millennium Falcon.
Same. Yeah, I was on another podcast where they were counting down the top 10 vehicles, and Millennium Falcon, I mean, it just makes so much sense. Joe Johnston having to quickly redesign the ship overnight, apparently, came back with a bunch of designs, and one of them, to this day, the story changes. We don't know whether it was based on a stack of dirty dishes or a burger with a pickle poking outside or a flying saucer and making it asymmetrical. But my God, what a design. You can see it. It's an icon, and all of those ships are, but that one in particular.
And the original design was the blockade runner that Leia was on, correct? And then what was the reason they changed that? I forget.
Well, the cockpit at the front was kind of protruded in the same way that the Falcon does now, but it looked very much like the ship from Space 1999, which was a TV series over here. So whether that was the real reason, I mean, it does look like that. It definitely does. Whether that's the actual reason, these stories become kind of apocryphal after a while, I think. But that's what we're going with.
They become as mythological as the myth that they created.
Definitely. And that's why Justin and I have made this book, really, because we're as interested by the behind the scenes as we are in the films themselves, if not more.
So my next question is, what is your favorite line to quote?
That's hard. There's so many good ones.
There are.
For a long time, I would say "Do or do not, there is no try" by Yoda. Then I liked "Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter." Like, it seems I have a Yoda theme going on. But I like Han Solo's lines. Han Solo's got the best lines. I love when him and Leia are on the Death Star, trading barbs, and he's like, "No reward is worth this." It's just little things like that are great. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be "Do or do not, there is no try," just because that was a staple for me for a long time. Like, I would just write it down in places, and I'm going with that one.
Yeah, that line means a lot to people, doesn't it? That would certainly be in my top 3, I guess. I mean, I do sometimes bust out some Darth Vader lines. If the kids' bedrooms aren't tidy, they say, "Look, it'll be tidy in 5 minutes," and I'll say, I do not share your optimistic appraisal of the situation. But I mean, "May the Force be with you always" is often what I sign off on emails to friends, and the abbreviation. So I guess that would be up there for me.
Yeah, I find your lack of faith disturbing is a fun one too.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you do any Star Wars impressions or impersonations?
Found someone you have, I would say.
Yeah, I could do.
You can better that one.
I can kind of do Chewbacca.
Very good.
I mean, Yoda found someone I would say. It's Yoda's little laughs that are the best, because he's this quirky little character in the beginning, and then he just totally shifts in the hut. He's just like, "I cannot teach him," and then you're just like, "Whoa, dude!"
What just happened? Is this guy okay?
Yeah. All of a sudden, Yoda's bipolar.
Yeah. I think so. I think he's great. I mean, he's been on Dagobah for so long. He's talking to animals. He's just like...
I always figured that he was testing Luke's patience,
Oh, he totally was.
I cannot teach him. This boy has no patience.
Yeah.
But some people say, "Oh, he's just this quirky character." No. Well, he isn't for the rest of the time. So
no, you're right.
Anyway.
That's exactly what happened. But it's fun to call Yoda crazy.
Mm-hmm. Well, he used to be able to do a Tauntaun impression as well, but I don't think I could summon it now.
Yeah, who's the comedian who does the Tauntaun?
Barry from HBO's Barry.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name.
Bill Hader, is it?
Bill
Hader. That's it.
Who did BB-8? And he's like,
yeah.
That's my Tauntaun. Forgive me. Bill Hader, you're the king. So,
besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content? This could be a TV show, a comic book, a novel, a game.
Now you just got the easy questions, don't you?
I would say the things I go to the most are probably the Rinsler books over the years, more recent years. But the Alan Arnold making of the Journal of the Making of the Empire Strikes Back, I think, is like the high bar on the making of books, any movie. And I've probably owned 10 copies of that.
That's the prose book. That's about 250 pages. That's almost a diary of day to day.
Exactly. And it's one of the few honest, diaries about the production of a movie without the kind of marketing machine kind of putting their stamp on it. He's showing it warts and all. He's showing Carrie pissed off at Harrison for changing lines and why can't she change lines and all of that stuff. And I think, I can't think of another one that puts you right in that moment. There have been other ones about movies where they're recounting stuff, but this puts you right there. You feel like you're reading it as the day, as the weeks go by.
Yeah, it's surprising Lucas let that out because it's so stark and just raw.
It's the holiday special of making of books. Like, how did Lucas let this go?
Well, I mean, maybe he read it and was like, okay, we're never doing that again. And that's when everything changed. He's like, I'm in complete control of the narrative here.
Yeah. And the Jedi one just isn't the same. Yeah. Here it is, in fact, right in front of me.
I didn't know there was a Jedi one.
Yeah. Edited by John Philip Peacher. Yeah. So, it's got some good stuff in there. It's still great. I mean, it's still great if you've never read it. It's well worth picking up. I think you can get it for like $25.
Yeah. It's definitely not as intimate. It's more of a chronological, just kind of like a bare bones. This is what happened on this day with little tiny inflections from John. But yeah, it's way different than the Empire one, but still worth a read for sure. And we pulled a lot of our dates from those books. I mean, I pulled a lot from that Empire book, and we pulled a lot for this book from the Peacher book and the Rinsler book. And I'm just glad those things exist because it's really good to have that reference point. And we've talked about this before, is like some of this stuff, you kind of have to get multiple sources to confirm certain dates are actually true, because there's some stuff that it'll say, like in the book, well, this happened on this day. And then you'll read in like Rinsler's book that they didn't get to it that day because of, something happened, so they had to push it back a day or something like that. So you kind of have to be an archaeologist with dates on this stuff and really kind of pinpoint what the truth is. And sometimes you nail it and sometimes you're a little off, and it happens, and it happened with Rinsler. I mean, he had some mistakes as well, but it's just, we are kind of archaeologists and just digging for the truth. It's fun.
So you're the Indiana Jones of film.
Yeah, he's my short round.
I was going to say that makes me short round. Yeah.
No time for love, Dr. Jones.
Hold on to your potatoes. Yeah.
So, back to your question real quick. I would say my go-to Star Wars. I want to say honestly, Heir to the Empire trilogy by Timothy Zahn. Because I read that in the 90s when I'd kind of like not walked away from Star Wars, but I'd grown out of Star Wars and I was probably like 16 or something. Or no, it was 93, wasn't it? So I think I just graduated high school, which ages me, but I remember that was a big deal because that was the first Star Wars content we had gotten officially for quite a while. And then
since 87, I think. Since like the Ewok. Yeah.
Okay, I was still in high school then, but
since 87, yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, it was great though, because it was just like this really captivating story, and it's like the sequel trilogy that we got then through books that I wish we had gotten later, but that's beside the point. But it was just, Thrawn is such a captivating character, and he's such a badass. Like he rivals Darth Vader in being one of the best villains in Star Wars, just for his tactical mind, and just everything about him is really unique. And I think Timothy Zahn did a great job of creating somebody to rival Vader, since obviously Vader was gone by that point. It's almost like he's a combo of Vader and the Emperor in that way, because he's got the Emperor's kind of cool, calm, collective evil, but he's got Vader's kind of presence and like, I'll choke you out, or I'll just have my guy choke you out, actually, my Nogri. But just a really cool series of books, and I remember as a kid reading them, and me and my friend Dan, who actually did editing on the book, we were big Star Wars nerds, so we were both just geeking out and talking about it all the time and waiting for the next book, and it was great. So I would say that's one of my main go-to Star Wars, that I'll go back and read those books and just it's such a unique time in Star Wars. I know Thrawn's changed now because they've gotten rid of all the legend stuff, but
it was the wilderness years, wasn't it? Really,
yeah.
I mean, there was nothing.
Totally.
You know, for me, it was 85. You know, the figures was stopped being made, and you know, I grew beyond that. And then when I saw those books, the first two were out, and I thought, what the heck is this? And it was like #1 bestseller. There's two of them, and there's a third one coming. You know. And it kind of blew my mind because we'd all imagined what was going to happen. We're going way off piste here, but yeah, I agree. I think we're about the same age, Justin, aren't we? So yeah. It hit me at that same time as well, and kind of I guess that's kind of what reignited it, along with, you know, seeing the films again on VHS and all of that stuff.
Cinema Craptaculous is your podcast destination for all things movies, good and bad, streaming series, good and bad, and pop culture, good, bad, and the ugly. You get a totally different show every week, such as People Also Watched with Adam, Dave, and Tara. They're three industry insiders who always find the hilarity in the big-budget feature and the lesser-known feature you may have missed. There is, of course, the Expanded Universe. This is your place to geek out. John, Doc, and S'more are your geek experts to talk about what's going on in the world of streaming series, movies, superheroes, pretty much any showbiz geek topic, they're going to talk about it. And, of course, there's the show that started it all, Cinema Craptaculous, with Stephanie, John, and Dave. You don't even need to have seen the movies these guys talk about to have a good time. So what are you waiting for? Go and subscribe to Cinema Craptaculous wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Now, talking about the timeline of Jedi and, you know, talking about that Empire Strikes Back book, like set diary that was written, and thinking about all the photos of Lucas, I realized that Lucas was pretty much a meticulous cataloger, it seems like. Through your experience in the Empire Strikes Back timeline book and the Jedi timeline book, what were some of the challenges of bringing all this information together?
I think one of the challenges that Justin mentioned earlier was sometimes the inaccurate recording of these dates. Like, for instance, if I pick up this picture book next to me here, it has the schedule of the movie. Now, those aren't the dates necessarily that those things happen because, you know, days had to be moved for X, Y, and Z reasons. The challenge really is that, you know, what we're trying to do is collate all of these dates together to give you a kind of stripped back, bare bones version of the pre-production, the production, the post-production, and beyond up till today, till the anniversary on the 25th of this month. And all of those dates are scattered throughout the galaxy, if you like, you know, and we're having to find magazines and books and online things and check sources. And one of the biggest challenges has been that we keep finding more stuff. Just today, I emailed Justin saying, man, I've just tripped over a couple more dates that I missed last time round looking through this particular publication. And I think they're important. You know, can we squeeze them in? Of course, it has a knock-on effect to the formatting of the book and how many pages there are and, you know, where the pictures go and everything else. And this is always the difficulty when you do anything creative. At some point, you have to kind of release your babies into the world. And I would imagine, looking at Justin's face right now, this is very much the last thing that we might get in the book before we publish. We do have proof copies on the way to us both at the moment to kind of check through and make sure we're happy. Which now, if we get these other dates in, won't be necessarily the final book. Or we might just leave those out. You know, we yet to have a full discussion.
We'll put them in. We'll find a way.
Good. Well, but that's the challenge, isn't it, Justin? Is just this information is spread everywhere. It's in magazines, it's in comic books, it's in, you know, periodicals, it's in TV guides, it's everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. You know, going back to what you said about Lucas, I mean, I'm not sure so much it was Lucas who was meticulous. I think it was the people around him on some level. I mean, I think it was a little bit of everybody, but I think Lucas was too busy, you know, trying to make these movies and tearing his hair out and then, you know, going through a divorce and everything to really be that meticulous. What he was meticulous about was making the movies and making sure that what was in that movie was what he wanted, you know, because one of the things that we came across doing it, and Rinsler talked about it, was Black Friday, where Lucas basically threw out 100 VFX shots and just came in and was like, you know what? This is my George Lucas impression. Yeah, we're not going to need those. We're just gonna not need them. I don't know how it went down, but I imagine it's something like that. And then Ken Ralston, who is one of the VFX supervisors, basically proceeded to take everybody out and get drunk after that because they had spent 4 months doing these VFX shots, and Lucas was just like, yeah, we don't need them. And you know,
and this was November, late November
Yeah.
82.
yeah,
You know, bearing in mind they're going to release this movie in May,
Yeah.
very last minute, and all of that work. You know, because we were talking last night to Jim Bloom, the co-producer who's done the introduction for our book, and you know, we were talking to him a bit about how it's a very different world that this movie was made in to what we live in now. You know, very analog world. There were telexes going across continents. You know, they're working in the 2 different time zones. You'd have to send film off to be developed so the dailies could be reviewed the next day or the day after. And all of these effect shots that Justin's talking about, that, you know, Ken Ralston and Richard Edlund did, they're done physically, you know, on an optical printer. There's hands on them, there's fingerprints there, if you like. And to be able to be in the situation where you have to just throw those away, I mean, maybe they are in the trash, because as far as I'm aware, I've not really seen any missing VFX shots. I've seen some missing live action sequences in cockpits and General Medine and soldiers and people like that, but I don't think I've seen the VFX shots. So maybe they were that pissed off that they just threw them in the trash and went out and got drunk.
Yeah.
I don't blame them.
Yeah, I don't either. So yeah, it's just, you know, things like that where Lucas, and talking to Jim Bloom, he had mentioned, you know, for Lucas, it was all about story. It was about the characters. It was about the story. It's like the visual, and he even says from Star Wars to Jedi, a visual effect without a story is a very boring thing, which still contradicts some of the prequel stuff, but whatever.
Just getting something done in Hollywood is a feat in itself.
Yeah. Creating anything. I mean, even doing this book, you know, we've spent hours, you know, Justin has spent a lot of time editing this and putting in all the information I've kind of been bombarding him with. And I've brought along some of the stuff that, you know, from interviews from my podcast that are fleshing out some of this stuff, and dug into a few more things that maybe, you know, a person on their own wouldn't find. Working together and collaboratively, we've managed to come up with something that is a step up from the Empire book. And, you know, we're even talking about maybe doing the Star Wars one for the 50th. Mm-hmm. We're talking about doing, you know, an extra edition of the Empire one, bringing it up to the standard that we've now got with this Jedi one.
It looks really interesting. Take me through some of what people should expect from the book.
I think for the most part, if you've seen the Empire book, it's like that, but amped up. And when I say amped up, what I mean is, you know, Jamie, because the Empire book I did basically on my own. It was a labor of love. It was just a love letter to fans, where it was just like...
Getting emotional now, Justin.
No, it was, though, because it was just, you know, I had seen all these dates floating around Facebook, and, you know, people had call sheets and all this stuff, and I thought, nobody's really compiled all this information into one, you know, volume or whatever. And Empire was my favorite movie, so I just kind of gravitated towards Empire, because you see him for all 3 movies of the original trilogy, but for Empire, you know, that's my favorite movie. So I thought, I'm just going to do this for me more than anything. And I started asking people for dates, finding dates online, and going through Rinsler's book and, you know, the making of Empire book, and just pulling dates from everywhere I could, Starlog magazines. And then I just put it into this book, and I just printed it out as a reference guide. And like I said, it was more for me than anything. But then, you know, other people were like, this is great, you know, we love it. And then that's kind of what led Jamie and I together. You know, we followed each other on Twitter, and, you know, I'd watched the Filmumentaries he had done, and those are things that I actually had thought about doing. I was actually going to do an Empire you know, movie scene by scene with the breakdown of behind the scenes information or clips. And then I watched his, and I was like, well, I don't need to do that now, because this guy's already done it and did a better job than I probably would have done. And in a way I was like, whew, God, I don't have to do all that work. but that kind of, you know, so I knew Jamie, and he knew of me through my book. And then, you know, as the story, he says, you know, he was starting to put dates up for Jedi for the 40th anniversary. And he started thinking like, wait a minute, didn't somebody do this for Empire or whatever? And he reached out to me, and he's like, are you going to do a Jedi book? And I was just like, oh, geez, I don't know. And I was kind of on the fence, because Empire was very much a labor of love, but it was very intensive, and it was a lot of work. And I didn't know if I wanted to do all that work again. And this is a long story getting to answer your question. But it basically became, you know, this was a year ago when we interacted for the first time through direct messages on Twitter. And it was basically, I was like, well, 40th is coming up. And it literally, I think, took me like 24 hours or less to say, you know what, let's do it. And from there, it just kind of, you know, we got together, we started each pulling dates from books and from sources and everything. And it just kind of went from there. And then what Jamie brought to the table was because him and I are cut from the same cloth. We're very much into behind the scenes and the making of stuff. And, we both had the book, the collector's edition, Return of the Jedi book that has all the behind the scenes stuff. And that, I feel like that kind of jump started both of us into this whole, and from Star Wars to Jedi and all that, it just kind of jump started. And I'm speaking for Jamie, you can interrupt me, but basically it was, I feel like for both of us, we kind of came from the same place of like that really cultivated in us, the desire to learn about how movies are made and then get ourselves into actual filmmaking. And so speaking with Jamie and the more we interacted and everything, I just, I feel like it was very kismet, and we were both very much on the same page as far as, bringing into this book, quotes from his podcast, getting an introduction from co-producer Jim Bloom, which is just a huge win for us because to me, it really ups the book and the value of the book and the legitimacy of it all. And this is very unauthorized. There's nobody from Lucasfilm has any idea we're doing this unless they've seen it online. But it's very much independent fan stuff. And, it's just Jamie brought a lot to the book, ideas and these exclusive diary pages from guys who worked on Jabba the Hutt, who had kept these diaries and had never released them. And these are like the first time in print. These diaries are going to be on our book, and just little things like that just added so much to the book. I'm like, wow, I wish I had had this for the Empire book, which is why we talked about redoing the Empire book. But having the exclusives that Jamie has brought really gives the book, like I said, more legitimacy, and it just kind of makes it more interesting because you hear from the people that were there at the time that were doing the work. And the diaries are really special because it's like they were actually written during the time, like day by day entries of these guys who were like working on Jabba the Hutt and were like, today we kissed Carrie Fisher with Jabba's tongue type stuff, and it's phenomenal. And, Jamie can speak more to adding that stuff. But for me personally, it just really upped the book as a whole. And I'm really happy you came on board, man. No, really, seriously. I think Jamie and I have struck a really good friendship, and creatively we've become, simpatico in a lot of ways.
Just going back to those diary entries, like I've got Dave Barclay's entry here in front of me. He says, filmed by the Jedi documentary crew, last day on the throne, Harrison and Carrie and Chewie. My ad-libs are a hit. Work till 8 p.m. Have moved to balcony. Don't film too much today. We watch Harrison and Carrie instead. Last day on stage 8. Finish with kissing Carrie. Filmed by Jedi documentary crew again. It's just, I've seen that documentary so many times where there's Dave saying, well, I'm the right arm and I operate Jabba's, and Toby on the other side. But just to have those like little insights into it, we worked hard today. Jabba dies and his body is breaking up, and these things that I've chatted to Dave about before, but in coming up with the idea to write his own biography, because Dave has worked on so many films over the years, he's dug out these little old slim diaries, like a pocket diary, and in them is just these tiny little handwritten notes. And he said, of course you can have them, Jamie. It'd be my pleasure, And John Coppinger, who was the animatronics engineer as well, who I spoke to when I made my Inside Jaws documentary. And he said, sure. And I've got some sketches here, early sketches I did of Jabba that I still have. And, there's a couple of Polaroids, and we put them in the book. And these are things that people might know about on a sort of macro level, but we've got the kind of micro level as well. And it's really nice that, we're able to put something that I, as a fan, would go, whoa, I've not seen this before. Because I think all the things I've ever done, whether it's my Filmumentaries, my short ones, my podcast, this book, the documentary I'm making, they're all things that I actually want to see. I am the fan. We are those fans. We are you guys and girls out there. I'm as excited to get this book in my hands as I would be if it was, somebody else making it. And we've made it with that kind of mindset. And,
we dedicated the book to Norman Reynolds, who had passed away this year. And, when you, even through the Empire book, when you kind of read through it, you get a really better understanding of the people behind the scenes who made all this stuff happen. It's, of course, you've got, George Lucas and Gary Kurtz and Howard Kazanjian and these people who are in the forefront of everybody knows their names. But then you've got somebody like John Coppinger, who I never knew his name until doing this book, but he was an integral part of what made Jabba the Hutt, and it's just like these unsung heroes working behind the scenes. I feel like this book kind of is an homage to them in a lot of ways. And, like I said, it really entwines with Jamie's podcast of presenting these people and preserving history. And that's really another reason I had done the Empire book and also wanting to do this is it's a historical preservation of this film because, these people are getting older, they're passing away, and it's like this information is going to be lost to time.
Well, it sounds very much like what you're doing, what Star Wars does with this fictional universe, which is, as you said, take that moment that's just 5 seconds, that could just be a throwaway, extra in a scene, like Jabba's palace, yak face, and zooming in on that moment and expanding on it. And instead of doing it fictionally, you're doing it.
Saying we're the Dave Filoni and the Jon Favreau of the fan-made film. I've got a hat on, and Justin had this,
You're the Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau of the behind-the-scenes moments and exploring those.
I'll take
how
it.
How
bringing
lovely
them
of you to say that.
I'll take it. Take it.
What is the most surprising thing that you personally discovered in doing this research?
How hard it is to do something like this. I mean, as Justin said, a lot of this information is already out there, and people will have read it in Rinsler's book and in John Peach's book and in magazines and official collector's editions from 1983 and things like that. But because we've collated it in this different way, it's a different way of experiencing this information. There are no whoa, I did not know that moments in there.
Yeah.
What there are, I guess, as we said, is just there's that bit more detail about it. And it's set out in a chronological fashion that allows people to use it as a research resource, let's just say that, just being able to combine our two minds, we've come up with something better than we could have individually, for sure.
Definitely. I mean, for me, it was, there isn't any groundbreaking, like, holy crap, Carrie Fisher and George Lucas had an affair. Like, there's nothing like that. Like something out of left field that nobody's ever heard of. Yeah, allegedly. And then there's this, the one of the things that, we've talked about this online is, the scene where Luke is building his lightsaber. And it was eventually cut from the film, and George Lucas had shown it at Celebration 7 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Hamill had made the comment, like, I don't remember filming that. I would have remembered filming that. And then it turns out, and you kind of discover it through Rinsler's book. It's not explicitly stated, but it was actually a stand-in in that scene. And his name was Randy Johnson, and he was an assistant cameraman. And the reason they actually used him for different insert shots of Luke Skywalker when Mark wasn't available, or they just needed somebody because he had a cleft in his chin. So he matched facially Mark Hamill, and he had the right build and everything, and the costume fit. So they used him. And that scene where he's building the lightsaber, and it's why the hood comes down like this, and you can't see his eyes; you only see the nose.
And it is uncanny. You buy it. It's such a good double. It's. I even, I was playing with Justin on Twitter the other day, saying I still can't believe it, and I did like a GIF of flipping between the two images, one of Mark and one of the guy that replaced him, and you would swear it's the same person.
Oh, so for sure.
It's that's a good example actually of something I wasn't fully aware of. I kind of remember it sort of on the periphery somewhere.
Yes,
but just. We've learned so much putting this book together, but we're not going to retain all of this. But we've got this book
exactly.
as proof of what we have learned. Yeah.
Well, because once you find...
That's why you do the book.
Yeah, once you find one thing, you're on to the next thing.
We've done the stuff on the back where you get, the kind of description and the bullet points. Just like on the back of this John Peachey book I have here next to me, it's got the bullet points about... it tells you all about the filming locations. And we say, well, we've got exclusive diaries and we've got exclusive photography from Kim Simmons, who did has re-photographed some of the Kenner action figures for us, because we talk about those. We talk about all aspects of production, the releases on video and Laserdisc. We talk about the toys, the games, all the way up to, in fact, my connections I've made through my podcast obviously have led to some of the exclusives in the book. But also I was able to contact Rose Degnan and Mickey Herman, who worked as production coordinators on the films, to say, I hear there's this Return of the Jedi anniversary kind of get together for ILM, and they said, Rose said, I'm organizing that. And I spoke to Kevin Pike, and he said, I'm going. And Jim Bloom last night said, I'm going down there too. And I said, look, we'd love to be able to get a photograph of you all. And Rose said, no problem, I'll take a photograph and I'll send it to you. You can put it in the book. So that will probably be like the last thing we put in the book, and it will literally have just happened like 3 days before, 5 days before the book is released.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take it from its very inception all the way up to now.
Now, what are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
For me, there's something, like I said, I was born in 76, right? So the first movie came out in 77, which for argument's sake, I will still call Star Wars, as I do. I don't remember a time where Star Wars was not on my walls, in my sock drawer, my slippers, my bookshelf, my toy chest. It was always there. So I have this sort of deep connection to it. And I think I was saying this last night when we were chatting to Jim Bloom as well, that there's something about the fact that they were shot in London, in outskirts of London, in Boreham Wood and Elstree Studios, that allowed me to have this connection to them. Even as a kid, I was able to go, I know where that is. I've driven past there. Dad, can we go and drive past there again and just sit in the car for half an hour and see if we can see anybody? And years later, I was able to get a tour around there and went to the prop shop there. And, snuck into some of the stages where some of this stuff was shot that still remains. A lot of it doesn't. I think there's a Tesco's supermarket there now, where the Ewok village was shot and the Emperor's arrival was shot. But there's just something about being bombarded with all that stuff as a kid. They say, I think, that you get up to kind of 10 years old and you are programmed. Everything from then on is kind of not predestined, but you have been programmed to that point. You can tweak and you can adjust. But, I feel like I'm kind of 85% Star Wars and, the rest, the other 15% is everything else I've experienced, because it's always there. It's, wherever you go in the world. And I've traveled a lot with my job.
What was the question again?
What are the 3 elements that make Star Wars
you can
to
talk.
you?
No,
you and your 10-minute
I really got into that response, and I was like, oh, crap, dude. What was the question? No.
Do you need a tissue to wipe away the tear there? Yeah.
No, that was a great. I resonated a lot with that. But what was the main question? The 3 things.
What are the 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
To me,
you need to be more strict with your answer now. We need 3. I'm going to write these down as you say that. 1.
Yeah, see, Jamie's the esoteric Yoda, and I'm the bare bones, keep it simple Obi-Wan Kenobi. 3 things that make Star Wars. I think adventure, excitement. No, it's the first thing is fun. Star Wars has always been fun. It's always been, like Jamie said, it's an escape. It's a chance to go into a world that doesn't exist, but it feels like it does, because, for us, Star Wars has always been in our lives. I was born in 75. He was born in 76. So, we literally don't know any life without Star Wars. The first memory I have is literally sitting on the floor. Like, this is the first memory I have, sitting on the floor, seeing a trailer for Star Wars. And that sticks in my brain as the earliest memory I have of just being like, whoa, of just, taking it all in, and, the quick cuts and everything that happened. And so, the fun is a big part of it. The second thing I would say is the heart. Star Wars has a lot of heart. It's always had emotion. It's always been about family, characters, good, and the good versus evil, and good always triumphs, which we learned. But I would say the last thing is probably, wow, because there's so much, it's hard to encapsulate it into like 3 things, and I'm trying really hard. But
maybe I don't want to answer for you, but I think community has an aspect here for me as well. I was able to connect with so many people, including Justin, through that kind of extended community, and to see, all the fans at Star Wars Celebration this year here in London. It was just a love-in, and there's something uncynical about Star Wars that I think, is also so that, you asked for 3, I've given you 12, David. Justin, you're still on 2. Okay, number 3.
No, I think you're right about the community thing, though, because the community is what helped me make this book, is, joining Facebook groups and talking with other fans. And I'm going to take community as my answer, but
it's yours.
But
you have it.
But you're right. It really is about, fans coming together and finding a common bond. And, it's like, obviously there's a dark side to the fan base of people who are very, vitriolic and very angry people, but I don't think that has anything to do with Star Wars. I think it's just who they are in their lives, and I think they need love, they need a hug. But the majority of Star Wars fans are extremely kind, compassionate, loving people. Yep. And I think that's why they're drawn to Star Wars.
It's been 40 years since Return of the Jedi. What do you hope for the future to see in Star Wars?
That's a loaded...
You said it. You set it up, Justin. Well, so you answer this.
It's a big question. I mean, I think they're kind of doing it now a little bit with The Mandalorian. I think it's kind of got diluted a little bit this last season. But, a return to the values, and I use that word loosely, but the values of the original trilogy of like Jamie said, things are very dark. You don't know who you're rooting for. Andor is an amazing series, but it's dark. It's bleak. It's adult.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not something that kids, I think, will enjoy that much. And then you've got, the quirky cartoon Star Wars stuff, but I feel like there's got to be a middle ground where you can get back into that storytelling. And like I said, The Mandalorian kind of touches on it. And I feel like the first 2 seasons, it really hit, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni really kind of hit the vein of the George Lucas vibe of Star Wars.
Agreed.
And I think they've kind of come the closest. But I feel like there needs to, well, it doesn't need to be, but I feel like I would hope that there's something more geared towards that kind of, I don't know, fun and space opera vibe where not everything is so serious, not everything is so detrimental, or everything has to be connected to prequels and Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. Like just more fun. I mean, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this final question. You go to Skywalker Ranch. There you're greeted by George Lucas. What do you say to him?
I've met George Lucas. I was lucky enough to meet George because I work on Formula One. He's a big motorsport fan, as you know. He loves speed, faster, more intense, and all of that. And one time somebody said, George Lucas is in the paddock. You've got to go down there and speak to him. And I managed to get permission from my boss to miss the live session I was working on as an editor. And I went down there and I saw George and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Lucas." And he didn't look. I said, "Excuse me, George." And he turned and he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, sorry to bother you." And he looked, my name was on my shirt because I have to wear a uniform when I was on site at racetracks. And he said, "Oh, hi, Jamie." And I said, "I'm sure you've heard this a million times before, but I just want to say thank you for, all the inspiration you've given me, to the point where I've actually made my own documentaries about your movies." And he said, "Oh, that's great. What are they called?" And I described, and I said, "Look, they're just online. They're not released anywhere." And he said, "Well, keep going. I'm sure you're going to be successful." And then he said, I said, "Oh, what race team are you here with this week?" And he was with Williams, I think. And we were chatting about what we thought might happen in the race. And I just thought, today is not a Star Wars day for George. It's I'm at the races day. So I said, "Look, I'm going to leave you and your lovely wife to have a great day. And do enjoy it. And, I hope your guy wins, And that was the end of our conversation. And my friend took some photographs of me chatting with George. He refused to send them to me for about 24 hours, kind of. Oh. Taking the piss, and then when he did, he cropped me out of the photos, and he's when was that, 2015, 2016, and I still hate him a little bit for that. Yeah.
Yes. For me, it would be like Jamie said. I would just say thank you. I don't know what else to say. Like Jamie said, it was just this appreciation of everything that he created. And, he's very inspirational. Like those movies inspired a lot of us to do things that we're doing in our lives now. And, obviously the Filmumentaries and the book and even like our filmmaking endeavors were inspired greatly from Star Wars and from George Lucas directly. So it would be thank you more than anything, I think.
Yeah, it worked, George. What you set out to do, which was to create something for kids and a morality tale and inspire people. Man, did it work? Yeah.
Jamie, where can I know you have to go? So where can people find you on the socials? And what are you working on after this that you'd like to let people know about?
So on Twitter, I'm at Jamie SWB. That stands for Star Wars Begins, because at the time when I released my Star Wars Filmumentary in 2011, that was what that was called, and I kind of got stuck with that. If you go to Filmumentaries on Facebook and on Instagram, and filmumentaries.com is my website where I upload. Occasionally I'll do a few different articles and things, but as well you'll get information and sometimes transcripts about the podcasts. Obviously we've got the book, Jedi Timeline, so it's available on Amazon worldwide. What am I doing next? I'm still chipping away in my Joe Alves documentary, hitting a few hurdles, but that's part of filmmaking. And, Justin and I are we've got this kind of relationship now where we're kind of talking each other into things. So we're talking each other into this Empire book and this Star Wars book, maybe for the 50th. We need a good run up for that one, because that's going to be a big old tome, that one.
Yeah.
For sure.
And all this information will be in the podcast notes as well. Justin, where can we find you, and what are you working on next?
You can find me online. Twitter, it's at TESB Timeline, which is The Empire Strikes Back. TESB Timeline. Instagram at HKL Films, and like movies. And then on Facebook, you can just facebook.com/Justin Berger. If I don't know you, I probably won't add you as a friend. But you can find me there. You can look Facebook Empire Strikes Back Timeline. There's Facebook pages and stuff related to the book, and that's pretty much it. As far as what I'm working on, I mean, right now it's just the Jedi book, getting that done. After that, we've talked about doing a special edition of Empire, so I've kind of been dabbling in that a little bit, and I think that's something that probably we're going to work towards doing. We actually talked to Jim Bloom, we had sent him a copy of the Empire book. He really liked it. And he's like, "Oh, I wish I had known you at the time. I could have helped you out." And I was like, "Well, hey, we're gonna think about redoing the book, so we may be hitting you up."
Yeah.
And he was like, totally fine with that. So, working on that. The Star Wars book. Jamie mentioned that's something. The 50th anniversary is like 3-4 years from now, so we have plenty of time to work on that. And other than that, I'm just kind of doing my own thing and trying to think of what to do next. Because for the past year we've been working on this book, and we obviously have our day jobs, but it's usually the day job is not the passion project or the thing that you absolutely love. So other than the books that I mentioned, I need to find a project. So if anybody wants me to help with their Star Wars book, hit me up. No.
The Filmumentaries Podcast, Conversations with Filmmakers. That would be one, Justin, we could do together. You could edit. I could chuck you all the stuff. Yeah, let's do it. We're making this now. Thank you so much, David, for having us,
creating stuff,
bringing us together.
We're always creating.
That's just going to be the show. It's going to open. It'll be that moment, and then we're out.
Actually, Justin, I've got a really good idea, but I'm not going to say it here. I'm going to tell you in a minute.
Okay.
Via WhatsApp. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
we'll give you the exclusive.
Yeah, give me the exclusive when you're ready to announce it. I'm really excited about this book. I love the idea of a Return of the Jedi timeline from 76 to 2023. It's a really cool concept and a great way to see behind the scenes filmmaking in a completely different way. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me. And it was a pleasure to find out what Star Wars means to you, Justin and Jamie.
Thank you. We had a great time. This was a lot of fun.
I did, yeah. It was good fun. Thanks, David.
So that's what Star Wars means to Justin Berger and Jamie Benning. It's amazing how Star Wars still brings people together. I've talked to all kinds of people whose fandom brought them together, and Justin and Jamie represent that so well. They were both doing amazing, passionate work about Star Wars on their own, and then came together to create something like Return of the Jedi, the unauthorized timeline from 1976 to 2023. It's a testament of Star Wars to bring that passion out in people. A passion to explore, a passion to connect, all because they are united in their fandom. Plus, it shows how many ways there are to look at Star Wars, from the characters, the storylines, the mythology, and even behind the cameras into the story of how it all came together. What do you think? Does Star Wars unite more than it is divisive? Are you picking up the book to see the timeline behind the creation of Return of the Jedi? But most importantly, between Jamie and Justin, who do you think had the better Yoda impersonation? Let us know and get in on the conversation on Twitter or Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. Next week, Trey Calloway, a writer of a ton of genre TV, as well as a professor at USC, joins me to tell me what Star Wars means to him. So hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. If you're liking the show, please give a 5-star rating and review. And remember, the Force will be with you, always. Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.